Good evening, welcome to Friday Night's Vid. If you watched the last video, we talked about digging deeper in the possibility of you becoming a theoretician. So we've basically, I'm not going to say in this short series that I've put together that we all went to some big huge college and been to Juilliard and all that kind of stuff, but I'm trying to address and touch on most issues so that as you progress through the series, that if you've made it to the last video in this series, that you've got a pretty good understanding of the realm that you're dealing with when you're dealing with music and things intercorrelated and related to music, your guitar playing and things like that, that are can be very much intrinsic to which type of path that you develop into and which path you take off onto. I'm not going to say that all the videos are really super in depth to be that informative as far as, laying everything out for you in detail, but to give you direction. Once you watched all those videos so far, that you should have a pretty good understanding of the direction you're heading in and a pretty good understanding of most of the basic concepts and structures so that you don't stumble around in those areas that much, that you've got a pretty good foundation to work with as you head off on whatever path you're going into. So at this point that you are really heading towards becoming a theoretician, or you've really scaled back and really taken some time to introspect and look at yourself and what you're trying to do with your guitar playing and your music and your theory and things related, and are starting to get a really good idea of the path that at least you're taking off into. That's not saying that that path won't change and go all over the place. Who knows where you might head off into, but at least you should be starting to form some foundation of a direction and taking flight, starting to flap your wings, bro, like an albatross trying to get flight going. So with that thought in mind at this point, the next logical conclusion is and step is sometimes debatable, and we're going to approach this really just kind of on the fly. I didn't really sit down and think about this too much because I didn't want to get it too clinical or anything like that. And some people think this should be approached a lot earlier, but I think now is a good time to approach this. And this is that music is about feelings and emotions. Now, music and the foundations can be very technical and clinical, but basically most people don't listen to music because of the technical, clinical aspects. Some people do, and there are times sometimes I do listen to music that I'm really listening to virtuosos or compositions that are just mind-bogglingly complex, that is, a clinical observation of the possibilities of things that can happen. But a lot of times music is about feelings and emotions. So we really need to address this. And it's a good time to address this because right now I'm at this point. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, so that I've gone through a whole lot of this stuff myself. And I've also gone off into studying audio engineering, sound, acoustics, all kinds of things, because I kept trying to record stuff in my studio and kept realizing I need to understand this other stuff besides just my musical journey. All these other things were very important to me creating these masterpieces that I wanted to do, right? So it got a little more involved, and so, but going back just to the guitar and the music involved there, that I've decided as of this last month that I'm taking about 3 to 6 months and I'm exploring my emotions and feelings. And so let's talk about that in a minute, because all the tools that we have are possibilities, that we have basic foundations to work with, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, to come up with other abstract concepts or ideas or usages of things that are, fundamental foundations and theories in music theory. But there's another aspect of it, is just feelings and emotions. Sometimes you just take off. Sometimes that might sound funny because you might think, well, duh, I'm going to start searching around for this chord that makes me feel this way. But to actually see it that way and see it in your mind, that you're not so much relying on the theoretical knowledge you have, the possibilities, the abstract concepts, and any of those type of things that you've learned so far, and some of the things you've branched out on into, but to really just sit down with your instrument and pick it up and just go, how do I feel right now? What do I feel like? And how do I voice that? How do I this feeling that I'm trying to get, do I have a feeling? Can I get a feeling? I'm in a rut and I need to get some kind of feeling going. Let's turn on some music and get some kind of vibe happening that's going to send me off in some direction, whether it's classical or jazz or reggae or whatever, to get me primed for, or do I already have it going on? Do I already have this feeling well up inside of me? And how do I voice that on my instrument? This is a huge concept. And the understanding of that is you can get into music psychology, music and emotion, and study into those things and look into them, what they do. And you can get some insights into what those possibilities, what doors that might open up for you. So I really recommend that you do that because that's the next logical step. And for me, I've studied some psychology and philosophy and things like that. And it's really boiling down to just picking up my guitar and just going, okay, I'm going to get a feeling. And how do I voice that? And playing a few notes or a chord and then going, where's that going to go? Is it going to go off, into this reggae thing, this jazz thing, this blues thing? How am I going to voice that? How do I get this emotion and this feeling voiced out on my instrument to convey that feeling? And to really look at it as you're really taking those tools and things you understand and trying to actually project feelings and emotions outward and use your instrument to voice these feelings and emotions coming from inside of you. It's a huge concept to really sit down and contemplate and think about and experiment with, and really see it that way and understand that's what's happening. And as you do that, you're really going to, as you take that chord or that melody and stop and think, where is it going? Is it going to change into some totally different genre, this other musical form? The tempo's going to change, the scale's going to change. How am I going to am I going to modulate? What's going to happen here to help convey this emotion? What kind of emotion and what kind of feeling do I want to create with my instrument? And how do I do that? How do I use these different things we've talked about so far in this series to try to make those emotions and those feelings happening from one chord to the next, from one progression to the next, from one note in the melody to the next note in the melody, from one melody line to a next melody line, from one verse to one chorus, from one form to another, from one movement in a song to another movement in a song, the transition that's connecting them. What do I want to how do I make that happen? How do I get this feeling inside of me go, I want it to go, wah, or I want it to go, ah, I want it to go off in this other feeling, what kind of feeling is that? Can I conjure that feeling up inside of me and then try to project it out with my instrument? And it's a whole new experimentation trying to, at each individual step, try to conjure up this feeling inside of yourself that's a possible path that, you get this feeling you're working on, what kind of feeling do I want? What kind of emotion do I want to come out of me? How do I feel it? How do I get it inside of me and get feeling that feeling? And then once I got it, how do I get that on my instrument? How do I voice that? How do I do it with articulations, with different scales, with different chords, with different types of voicing the instrument, dynamics and all kinds of different things, all the things that we've talked about as tools to try to convey that emotion that you spent a bunch of time trying to conjure from one movement to the next. You've got this feeling going on and you've finally just kind of worked it out to where it's coming out in your guitar, and you've got this transition coming up and you're really sitting down and thinking about, What's this feeling? How do I get what feeling? I got to work it up inside of my mind and in my heart first. Trying to get this feeling, to well up inside of me. And then once I get this feeling that I've got this feeling that's going somewhere else, and it's not so much musical as psychological and emotional, that you've got this other thing happening and you've managed to conjure it up inside of your mind, and it's tangible. It's tangible, just as tangible as mathematics. You can feel it. It's palpable in your own mind and in your feelings that you've conjured this up. And once you got it and you've got it welled up inside of you, you start trying to figure out to hold on to it and to try to get it voiced out. How do I get that to feel that feeling I'm having right now, to get it to come out on my instrument? What tools do I have to make that feeling flow out of me onto my instrument and into the composition as the next phrase or the next chord or the next way I voice the chord or the next transition or the next movement? How do I voice that? First, how do I get it inside of me? How do I capture it inside of me so that feeling is and that emotion is happening? Then how do I get it flowing out of me onto the instrument? What tools do I have? How do I get that going? How do I get that finding? It's exciting because the whole understanding of this is, I may sound like an idiot bouncing around, my hands flying all this, but it's kind of the way it is, because you can get real clinical into the psychology and emotions and feelings and things like that and research those things to really understand them and the possibilities of your feelings, emotions, and the psychological effects on your own mind, and really dig deep into that as another musical tool and theoretical tool. And how do you do that? It's a whole nother experiment that you really are sitting down and trying to work with that as something, not something that everybody knows. Music is, emotions and feelings are part of music, but to actually conjure it up inside of yourself, and then it kind of, once you get it flowing out of you, get it flowing on there, and really spend the time focusing on that as a more important factor than anything else. Everything else is just tools to try to get that flowing out onto the paper and onto your instrument so that it's accurate as possible to what you are feeling, and trying to practice being able to convey that as accurately as possible so that other people around you hear that and they get that same kind of feeling. Sometimes they will, sometimes they may get a little bit different feeling, which is a cool concept in itself, that you've got this feeling, and you spent so much time trying to conjure this feeling and this emotion and really get it boiling inside of you, and then start trying to voice it and figure out how you're going to voice it. And it might affect somebody else a little bit differently. And it's a cool thing because you start realizing that it's affecting somebody else just a little bit differently than you had originally intended it to, but it's still cool because it's like, well, that's not exactly how I intended it, but with the words, if it's just instrumental, that it's like a painting and interpretational, which can open up all these worlds of possibilities in the psychological realm for you to really dig around, and you start to understand that, well, this is things that are happening with looking at music this way and really focusing on developing that. What's happening to yourself, how you're voicing it, how is it touching other people, how are they reacting to it? Is it touching the same kind of feeling in them, or is it developing something else in them? If it's not guided by words in a song that make it pretty obvious what you're trying to evoke, that it's a really huge tool. And one of the huge things of studies in this area is like movie scores. Movie scores are really super intrinsic because a lot of movie scores, some of these individuals have spent years and years and years trying to figure out what kind of music do I play here when little Timmy's crying, or Bobby's dog get run over, or Jimmy gets his first kiss, or it's whatever might be happening, love, first love, or a breakup, or fear, and destruction, and the end of the world, and it's like what kind of musical things are the transitions and developing into it and out of those things, and from one emotion to another emotion, and to have possibilities that different composers have used to try to convey or to back those emotions, because a lot of times that it's pretty obvious in the movie that Timmy's crying and he's sad about his dumb dog Bobby who ran out and got squished by the garbage can guy. It's pretty obvious what's going on there, and but still they're still trying to convey music that supports that really helps build that emotion to where you see dog and he's getting crying, but it's not really making you all that soppy, bro. And then the violins come in and the cellos, and pretty soon your wife's sitting there going, "Oh God," and say, or your kids or you, and it's like, and it really pounds that effect in. And it can be the same way with music or a song you create, that those words, it may be pretty obvious that Bob's sad about Timmy, my poor dumb dog got shot by the neighbor or whatever, and my poor lost dog, and I'm gonna have myself a Budweiser on Friday or whatever. But the music, it really is underneath it. The better you get at it, understanding it, the better you're gonna portray that, and it's that much more exciting because you've just crossed a whole other realm, which is a next logical step for you to develop yourself in. Because if you've gotten this far in my series, that you've really heard me explain and try to point out things in as unclinical a way as possible, with direction for you to get as dang clinical as you would like, bro. Because don't worry, there's clinical stuff all over the place, and all kinds of people be really happy to theorize with you and get as clinical as you want. But a lot of times music isn't about that, and it can be a turnoff to some people that they're like, "Oh no, bro, I can't deal with no more algebra, bro. I just want I want to play some guitar." So I mean, and it's true. So I've really tried to portray it and project my series that way, so that if you can make it through the whole series, that at the end you're learning something, and that whatever you decide to, whatever path and journey and adventure you decide to take your guitar on, that you are more rounded, you are wiser, and you are more knowledgeable about the arena that you're dealing with whenever you're dealing with music and your guitar. So this is the next logical step to really explore, using that feelings and emotions are a huge tool. And the only way to look at it as clinical is music psychology and actually studying emotions and feelings and the relation to music. And there's lots of studies you can do on that. And there's also movie scores are a huge thing for you to get into, and just really spend some time watching some movies with some serious emotions happening and some serious dramatic changes happening and transitions, for you to really expose yourself to what is happening there and what's happening there, and try to break that down to what are they doing there to back that, so that it causes it to be that much more powerful. Does that make sense? And on top of that, just digging it up in yourself and really trying to sit down and trying to get that emotion welled up inside of yourself. Get yourself worked up to being sad, to being happy, to being angry, to being, doom, whatever. Happy reggae. I'm just so damn happy. It's not even funny, bro. I'll smile like an idiot. And it's like, with all due respect, I mean, that's reality. So getting that worked up in yourself and then trying to figure out how you're going to project that, and work with it, might change a whole lot of your outlooks as far as music. Because even something simple as that you might be trying to get yourself worked up for this reggae song and getting yourself happy, stupid beyond comprehension, and really getting it worked up inside yourself, and you might decide, well, I don't know, I've just decided that I don't really want to do that with reggae. I'm going to go lean towards this other type of music that I can really, and these other instruments that are really you know, in conjunction with my guitar or this style of guitar that's going to portray that, what I was feeling as far as happiness, better than the reggae that I thought was going to portray that. You know, not that you're going to throw reggae away, bro. God forbid, you know. I mean, I'd be unhappy. Reggae is one of our genres. We're not throwing none of them away, but, you know, it's like, does that make sense? It might change your outlook because all of a sudden you start feeling around and you really got that feeling going up inside and you start experimenting, you digging around, and something else might develop from you really focusing on the feelings and emotions first, you know, and then more worried about developing that. You know, you pick up your guitar and you're going, well, what am I doing? I'm running scales, I'm in a rut, I'm bored, chord, and I'm getting tired of that crap, you know, and then, you know, you're not getting stuck, you know, so set it down for a minute and focus on that. Focus on your feelings and your emotions. Let that be your guiding light. Don't sit around and pick up your guitar. What can I do next? Focus on, well, I get this feeling. I got to get this feeling going. I got to get this happiness going or this sadness going or this some kind of feeling. Get it worked up in myself. Almost like developing a riff or a melody, you know, the same kind of concept, but you're trying to develop this feeling or emotion inside of yourself and get it flowing inside of yourself, you know, and then once you got it going, you really feeling it and you're really feeling it, you know, permeate yourself and you're getting it, you know, and then pick up your guitar. How do I voice this? Okay, I get it back. That's what I was feeling. How do I get this worded out on, how do I voice this happening on the guitar and instrumentation, and what kind of tempos, then what kind of tempo would that be? What key might sound best in that, you know? I mean, what progression, what scale, what chord would sound good? What kind of melody line on top of that? And then it just goes on, because your primary concern isn't what was happening on the guitar or music theory. Your primary focus was the feelings and the emotions. You had set down your theory, you had set down your guitar, and you're working on that. How do I develop that? How do I make that happen? How do I get that happening in me? How do I get that rolling and get that feeling going? And then I pick up my guitar, and I got my guitar, and then I pick up my theory, and then between those three things, the primary focus is the feelings and emotions and developing them and then being able to voice them well. So I hope this video wasn't too long, and I hope that doesn't sound too weird, but I really tried to stay away from trying to make that too technical so you could understand the basic simple concept that is of seeing that music is the emotions and the feelings first. Meaning you've set down your guitar, you've set down your theory, it's not even your mind. You're not even thinking about that. You're thinking about feelings and emotions, and you're going to sit down and think. You're not thinking about words, you're not thinking about nothing. You're just trying to, because the words can be the same thing as guitar and its theory, you know, poetry. So you're trying to put, you know, words to feelings and emotions as poetry with words. So that can be the same thing. Set that aside also. Work on those feelings and emotions. Get that welling up inside of you. What you're feeling. You know, what kind of emotions can you develop inside your own mind, and just start thinking about it and try to develop them. Get them flowing out of you and get them happening. You know, and you get those feelings and emotions happening in yourself and start looking around for ways to motivate your mind to start feeling those feelings and emotions. You can get them welling up inside of you. Then you actually start thinking, I feel sad. What does that feel like? What's happening with sad? You know, what is sad? You know, I mean, that feels sad. What exactly is that feeling? Or I'm happy. What is that feeling? What exactly is that? What's happening? Or I'm kind of in love, or I want to, hug this girl, or kiss this girl. What exactly is that? You know, I mean, what is that feeling? What exactly is happening there? How do I describe that feeling? How can I, I got that feeling rolling around inside of me. Now I'm developing it and exploring it and feeling it and experiencing, letting it roll around inside of me. And I know it sounds funny, but it's true, because as you think about it, you develop that your creative tools now have become your feelings and emotions, and those are the guiding force in what you're going to do next, which is going to be pick up your guitar and then think about your guitar, your theory, possible poetic things that, with words to portray whatever you're feeling in conjunction with that. But the guiding foundation there, that's motivation and moving you forward, and the primary concern is the feelings and emotions, and you developing them and developing them into something that's tangible and palpable that you can hold on to, and then really work on, how do I voice that feeling? I got that feeling inside of me, and I've, thinking about it, and how do I get it worded out on the guitar? What's going to voice that? What's going to sound, what's going to project that with this instrument and the theory that I understand, to try to project that as well as possible. And it's a huge study, it's a huge development in your becoming the best guitarist and the best musician possible as you develop that area of yourself. And that's a real personal journey that you're going to spend a lot of times with yourself, because it's inside of here. You really need to work on developing that and exploring that, and what those emotions and feelings are, and how do you get a hold of them, and what exactly do they mean to you? How do they feel? And what do they do to you? And then when they start doing those things to you, and you're thinking about them and actually exploring them, and spending, trying to well them up inside of you to bring them to the surface, and what that really is, what those feelings, emotions really are, as a driving force that is what you go to look at first before you even pick up the guitar, and start trying to figure out how its relation to your instrument and the theory and the words or whatever is going to be working in conjunction with that. Those are the primary driving forces: your feelings and emotions, and exploring them, bringing them to the surface, and letting them rise up and be the guiding force before you even pick up your instrument. Because your instrument isn't going to be an instrument, it's going to be an instrument in the most fundamental way and the most beautiful way that you're going to pick up your instrument, because it's an instrument to sing through, to let these emotions and these feelings sing through your instrument. And it's a powerful, beautiful thing when you can understand that it's actually such a huge force in your development at this point. Because at this point that you really, in my opinion, the logical next course is for you to develop that. And only spend a lot of time with yourself, because it's a study. It's not that you just pick it up and, oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's a whole nother study. And you might get on the internet and you start studying music psychology, some psychology, studying about music, feelings and emotions, and the relations to music and things like that. But a lot of times it's going to be you sitting there trying to get these feelings and emotions happening, and then immersing yourself in them, and then you really coming to some understand what that really means to you, how those feel to you, what kind of things happen to you, as you're experiencing these emotions, and then trying to figure out how, picking up your guitar, how do I make that, how do I express that, so that, the first primary concern is you expressing it, so you can understand it, that you're expressing it because you want it to bounce off the wall and come back at you and go, yeah, that's what I was feeling. Yeah, dude, that's exactly what I was feeling. Yeah, dude, all right. But then the next thing is you want to, the next other logical step is you being able to get these feelings and emotions, or watching somebody else's feelings and emotions, and being able to take those feelings and emotions and being able to somehow get them inside of you as best as possible, or as well as you can interpret them, and then trying to project them out again with your instrument and your creation. And it's a huge study, and it's a huge development in your process to becoming an awesome musician and guitarist, because it really can change a lot of the way you see a lot of things, as far as your guitar, as far as theory, and as far as how you're developing, in what direction you're developing, what paths seem ideal to you at this moment and seem most appealing to you this moment, as far as your style and your technique and your preferences. That it's really, if you really spend some time in this, and I'm not talking about, a night, or a weekend. I mean, spend some time really working on this as a study, and a development, as in you as a guitarist and a musician, to really see this as something you really need to work on and experiment with and develop inside of yourself, and develop it in conjunction with your instrument and your theory and your mind, and how these all interplay together to voice these emotions and feelings as raw foundational, forces, primary forces that are the primary foundations of the creations that you start creating. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that gives you an idea and didn't lead you off in too many directions, cause a whole bunch of, because feelings and emotions can be very confusing sometimes, or let's just say historically that there's been a lot of debate about them and how they are and what the reality of them is and what they actually mean. So those feelings and emotions have to come from inside you, and then you have to project them out and experiment with them and really see them as the driving force in your production and see what happens, and experiment with them, study them, and think about them a lot and their relation to what you're trying to do, and using them as a primary driving force in whatever you're trying to do. So I hope you enjoyed the video. At this point in the series, I think you should be well on your way to being a very good guitarist and a very well-rounded musician. And with this video here, I think that you are well on your way to understanding that what it means to become a really good guitarist and a really good musician, and the things involved in you becoming that. Peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed this series. I'll see you in the next video.